This is ogforums.com Real Talk, an unfiltered, independent perspective on Acumatica Cloud ERP. My name is Tim Rodman, and I want to mention three things in this pre-recorded intro before we get started. First, thank you to our sponsors. Our first sponsor is Paya. Paya offers Acumatica users a suite of industry-leading payment orchestration tools. Far beyond native Acumatica payments, Paya enables EMV NFC terminals for countersale. They offer a frictionless customer portal through their click-to-pay solution, and they support most e-commerce platforms and point-of-sale solutions used with Acumatica, such as One Retail and AcuPOS. And best of all, omni-channel reconciliation is available for all their solutions. Our second sponsor is DataSelf. DataSelf Analytics is a revolutionary reporting solution that enables organizations to make the most informed decisions faster and easier than ever. It uniquely simplifies business intelligence, empowers anyone to build and access dashboards, and delivers critical business insight when and where you need it. Our third sponsor is Aldrich Web Solutions. Are you a distributor using Acumatica, yet struggling with an e-commerce fit? US-based Aldrich Web Solutions out of Marion, Illinois, has 2 decades of experience helping distributors find success online. Our team of experts built the integration, creating websites that work effortlessly with Acumatica. With our reputation for swift customer service and meticulous attention to detail, we are the perfect fit for distributors needing online solutions. Please take a minute to support this podcast by clicking each one of the sponsor banners located at augforums.com/sponsors. Our sponsors track clicks, and every click helps to support this podcast. The second thing I'd like to mention is that I'm always looking for victims. I mean guests. If you use Acumatica in any capacity, no matter how small, I'd love to talk with you. Check out augforums.com/podcast and click the link near the top of the page to learn more about being a guest on the podcast. Third and finally, I'd love to see you listed on my Rolodex. Check out augforums.com/Rolodex to find out who else is using Acumatica and read the instructions at the top to see how you can add yourself to the list. All right, that's it for the pre-recorded intro. Let's get started. Today is Tuesday, March 11th, 2025, and this is episode number 147. You can find related links on the episode page at augforums.com/episode 147. Today I'm talking with John Buettler, and John, I forgot to ask how to pronounce your last name, so please correct me if I got it wrong, about his journey from working with metal as a machinist to working with Acumatica Cloud ERP. So John, first off, thanks for joining, and second off, did I pronounce your last name right?
Well, thank you for asking me to be here, Tim. No, it's actually pronounced Bittler, believe it or not.
Whoa, way off. Okay.
Yeah, you know what? You're not the first, and you certainly won't be the last.
John Buettler. Okay. All
Yes,
right.
yes. It's a German thing there.
Well, I always love learning new stuff. I'm a geographically illiterate American, so I
Don't worry about it.
about things that are outside the United States.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've been getting Butler and Butler my whole life, so that's I'm used to that.
Well, I always like to start with the brief origin story of all of our guests. So maybe you could tell us where you grew up, where you went to school, and how you landed in the world of mid-market ERP.
Yeah, sure. Wow, it's been quite a journey, I will say. I've done a lot of different things. So I originally grew up in Philadelphia, and I went to school down there, high school and grade school and all that, and then for college, I ended up studying originally. I studied education, and at the time, I'm 40 years old now, but at the time I was, only 18, and I wanted to be a teacher, and so that's the path that I initially started on, and I found myself after college teaching down in Arizona. Actually, I taught on the Navajo Native American reservation down there, and that was a wonderful experience and spoke to me in such a way that I decided to switch gears a little bit. I had a little bit of a shift. The area down there it's a very low income area, and it's that kind of spoke to me a bit, and I ended up using my education background and transitioning into social work. And I came back to Philadelphia after that, shortly after that, and for the next 10 years, I was a social worker. I worked with Child Protective Services and helped. I worked in what was called a family reunification program, and which is exactly what it sounds like. My clients were parents that had children already removed from their care by the state, and we were a program that tried to reunify the parents with the children. And I did that. It was very fulfilling. I did that for many years, but it was also very emotionally taxing. And I always tell people that I am the classic case of the social worker who uh, gets emotionally burnt out and and just so I knew for the sake of my mental health and also for the sake of the betterment of my clients that I needed to switch gears, and it was at that point in my
I'm curious
life
real quick.
that
I'm curious real quick for you, like
oh yeah,
what
yeah,
are the signs for you if you can share that? Like I think everyone has different signs on when they're getting burnt out. What if you don't mind sharing, like what were those signs
oh
for
yeah,
you? How did you kind of know that?
yeah, absolutely. So for me the number one sign was the the lack of enthusiasm for the job. When I say burnt out, it was a loss of energy. Um, with each new client, you have to pour so much of yourself into that case. When I first started out, I had a mentor, and he taught me a very valuable lesson about what it means to be a good social worker. And the gist of it was that he said that the number one thing is you have to feel the other person's problems. You have to feel the hardship that they're going through in their life. And I did for many of my clients, and that was what eventually that simultaneously helped me be a better social worker, but it also was the reason that I became burnt out, because after doing that so often, you lose a bit of yourself each time. And I found myself at a point where I couldn't keep doing that, and the enthusiasm just was not there as it had previously been, and I knew at that point that I wasn't being a good social worker or case manager, what have you, for my clients. I felt my clients deserved someone who could pick up that torch and be that type of person for them, and it just came at that point in my life I could just no longer do that.
That
So
makes
that
complete
was
sense. No, yeah,
yeah,
thanks for saying that. Because I think it's not just in that line of work, it's in any line of work, right? Like or just
sure.
in life in general. So it's nice to be able to, hear what your signs were. Energy is a great example there. It's not always a physical problem. Sometimes it's just burned out, emotionally burned out. So no, thank you. I appreciate it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, it was just at that point I knew that, I was no good to them, and I needed to move on. And that was really the impetus, I for the big change, that kind of started me down the path of programming, which then eventually led to ERP, because I knew that after I got out of the social work world, that for my own mental health, I had to do something completely different. Like I had to just do something completely different. Um, and so I began looking around, and I briefly kind of fancied myself as getting into blacksmithing, because I kind of just thought to myself, well, I was kind of throwing darts at the wall a bit, and seeing what would stick, and I was like, well, I always kind of wanted to work with my hands, and maybe I could do something with that, that sort of thing, and so I originally thought, oh, maybe like a blacksmithing apprenticeship. That sounds fun. I could do that. And so I started to kind of pursue that a little bit. But then I had this opportunity that came up kind of out of nowhere. It was just a job posting that I saw to become, to be hired as an entry level machinist. And I thought to myself, oh, okay, well, this is something I've never done before. I didn't really even know that this was a thing. And for those out there who don't know what a machinist is essentially a metal worker. Oftentimes when you are in a job where you are a machinist, you're working for a company that is, they could be doing defense contracts for the United States. They could be, or around the world. They could be doing mostly what I did, which was worked in the aerospace realm, and all the way up to, you could be working for a company that develops lab equipment, kind of like, like the biosciences world. So there's a lot of different things that a machinist can do. And so I started my journey in this world, and it was new. They hired me completely green. And then it turned out that I really quite enjoyed it. And I didn't expect that. So I began that journey, as I said, and as time went on, um, I wanted to move up. I wanted to use my brain a little bit more. And one day I was looking over the shoulder of my then supervisor, and
Wait, before you go there, I will mention that you sent
oh
me
sure,
this really cool YouTube video. I just pulled it up. It's a 4-minute
oh yes,
video
oh
produced by
yes,
Cornell University that basically describes what you did as a machinist.
yes,
I'll include that on the related links on the episode page at augforums.com/episode 147.
oh
But
yes,
yeah,
yes, yes.
so
My
you
my fifth my 15 minutes there.
4 minutes actually, not quite 15.
Yes, my figurative 15 minutes, I should say. Um, yes, that was actually a little bit a few years in when I was a few years into the job, at the place that hired me completely green. And yeah, after, like I was saying, at a certain point, I was just kind of looking over my supervisor's shoulder, and I said, "Hey, what are you doing there at the computer?" And he said, "Oh yeah, this is programming, doing some programming the CNC machines." And again, for those that don't know, a CNC machine is a CNC stands for computer and numerically controlled machine, and those are the machines that we use to craft metal, to cut metal in, and to shape it into the different parts that the customer is asking for. So I took quite a shine to that pretty immediately. I saw that. I thought it was great. I knew it was something I wanted to get into right away. So I said, "Hey, can you teach me how to do this?" And they said, "Sure." And that was my first kind of journey into programming. And from that point on, I learned an immense um, amount of information about, specifically in that world, CAD and CAM software. Again, for those that don't know, CAD stands for computer assisted design, and CAM stands for computer assisted machining. And so there's many different softwares out there that are CAD CAM softwares, and the ones that we were using was this one was called Autodesk. It was a great piece of software. I still love it, and that really ignited my love for programming. And it was at that point that I that Cornell at the time was our primary benefactor at that company, and they wanted to do a little mini documentary. Originally, it was going to be about the company itself, but I guess they liked me so much that they kind of decided to make me the the centerpiece of the documentary.
And a
As
star
I
was born.
and a star exactly, and a star was born. Yes, I'm still waiting for my star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Any day now, any day now. Um, but yes, and I was quite passionate about it for many years. At that point, I thought to myself, oh well, I would, I could see myself doing this for a long time, and I was in that world, and I was in it, and I eventually moved on from that company, kind of moved on to bigger and better things, and after that was when I really transitioned from being just a machinist to what at that point I would call myself a CNC programmer, and I did that for many years, and I got to a point actually just recently. It was just recently. Um, the company that I was a part of, they unfortunately they had to make the tough decision to close down our machine shop that I had been working in, and so that was. They're to their credit, they were very nice about it. They gave us, very good severance and all that, which is unheard of practically in the machining world. And so I was kind of feeling a bit rudderless, at that point. The market, the machining world, it can be so volatile, especially if you're working on like a per contract basis. Um, so I, I kind of found myself in a similar place to where I was before when I was in between social work and machining. And I was, I kind of thought to myself, oh, do I want to keep doing this? I have this love of, programming, and at the same time, that field, as I said, can be so volatile. It's like, do I maybe want to find something with a little bit more security? And that was kind of what led me to the current position that I'm in right now. And I happened to, obviously, I was looking for a job, and I came across this current job that I'm at right now, just through the usual channels, and it was for a what they call an ERP, workflow coordinator. And I thought to myself, well, I don't really know anything about that, but hey, why not? I'll just give it a shot. I'm pretty savvy with computers. Maybe this could be something that I could do. And I went ahead and I sent them my resume. They liked it. They called me in for an interview. Then they called me in for another interview, and I ended up getting the position. And since the beginning of December, so a little over 3 months now, I have been working specifically with Acumatica, um, in this company, and I've been learning how to use it, and that will become the 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 focal point or the centerpiece of my job as it is right now. So right now it's exciting. I'm learning a lot of ins and outs. It's been a lot of fun, and there's been some hair pulling moments as well, but I don't think I would be the only person to have ever said that. but it's going well, and I'm looking forward to learning more and kind of diving deeper into the world of not only Acumatica but just ERP in general.
So before we dive further into that, I like to make the point right about here that your background is what I would call the typical background for a mid-market ERP person,
Hmm.
in the sense that
Interesting.
there is no typical background, and I personally think that people who come into ERP somewhat accidentally, I mean that was me, also, but I feel like people who come in somewhat accidentally and who have a kind of varied background. Like one of the best ERP people I know was a theater major, and
Oh, that's funny.
just these kind of varied backgrounds. I feel like you're actually better prepared than you might think you are. I think a lot of people think, well, someone who's really good at ERP would have done computer science major in college or something like that. And in my opinion, I don't think that's the case. I feel that the more varied your background, the better prepared you are because ERP is so varied. You're really we're talking about organizations and business more than you are about the computer itself. And so, anyways, I always like making that point right about here that your background is actually, in my opinion, a great fit for ERP. And I'll mention one other link that I'll drop on the episode page and the related links. It's to episode 38, which was titled "From Welder to Consultant." Nick Savage Mady, and so he talked about his background from being a welder to getting into ERP. And again, I just think that varied background is a strength. So you might not think that way, but anyways, that's how I think. And
Well,
I think
it's definitely an encouraging thought to hear that coming from, from someone else, because that's kind of what I've been telling myself. So it's good to hear it from someone else.
so. You've been doing Acumatica now for just 3 months. But maybe you could tell us more
Yes.
about the company you're working at and kind of their Acumatica history before we get into your personal experience with it.
Oh, sure, absolutely. So the company that I'm working for is they're known as they're under the umbrella Farmer Group, but it's we're in upstate New York, and we are a cannabis company. And the specific LLC that I work for under that farmer group, umbrella is known as New York Hemp Oil, and I don't know if how much you or any of your users are kind of aware of the legalization of cannabis on the state level, but New York only just legalized it a couple of years ago. So this company very much has, as I've come in, as I said, only 3 months ago. Um, and I knew this going in, and it's been the case since I've been there. Is that it very much has that startup vibe to it, and with everything going on with the legalization of cannabis, there's a lot of organization. There's a lot of firsts that have to happen, and for this particular company, they only just started using Acumatica, I want to say about a year ago or so. And they obviously the goal is to begin, tracking everything diligently, to make sure that we have all these kind of disparate departments, but bringing them all together and using the same platform has become in the last year a very big priority for them. So that's kind of where I fit in. They
Can I
didn't
ask that
they
you mentioned Farmer Group being kind of like the parent
the
organization,
parent,
New York Hemp
yes.
Oil being a subsidiary. Is the entire Farmer Group portfolio on Acumatica, or is it just starting with New York Hemp Oil?
The entire group, if you will, is on Acumatica. So that includes not only New York Hemp Oil, that includes our CBD side of things, which is known as Head and Heel, and it also translates to other parts of our company as well. Um, and so the idea is the reason why brought me on was because they needed somebody to begin to really start thinking about what does it look like to have everything, all our ducks in a row when it comes from seed to sale. Because, I think a lot of times people think about, oh, this is a cannabis company. Okay, you guys are just selling weed, and okay, you just kind of do whatever you want. But it is not the case. It is extremely regulated and tracked. And you
You're
can't
doing the
just
whole chain. You're doing the entire production side. You're not just a distributor.
we have three different licenses. We have a cultivation license. We have a processor's license, and yes, we also have a distributor's license as well. So my side of things will be working with literally farm to sale. So I will be helping to. I'm going to be assisting with tracking everything that happens during cultivation and harvest, truly from the seed level all the way to production and distribution and what goes out the door, what actually gets delivered, to make sure everything is recorded as it needs to be, everything, all the data is there. Because if the state decides to come in and give us an audit, we need to have all our ducks in a row there.
That makes sense. What type of an audit? So first you said it would be a state audit. So it sounds like it's regulated. I'm curious to learn a little more about the industry. It sounds like it's
Absolutely.
regulated at the state level.
It is,
And what
yes.
what kind of audit would it be? Would it be like a process audit or mainly a financial audit, or what
It
would
would
that
be
be?
mostly a financial and inventory audit because you want to make sure they want to make sure that we are. So if you have a cultivator's license, let's say you're only available, or you can only grow a certain amount. I believe it's up to 5 acres. So um, if you have 5 acres of land and you're growing cannabis on there, every single row has to be tracked. Every single plant that goes in the ground and every single plant that comes out of the ground has to be tracked. And then once you harvest those plants, yes, then it goes through the processing phase. Everything gets trimmed, everything gets sorted, and then that becomes your product. We call that kind of like the dry flower phase. We also have frozen flower as well. So there's different kinds of things you do with the plants when you take them out of the ground during harvest time, and that all has to be accounted for. So if the state came in and looked at our books and they said, okay, well, it looks like you're, selling more than you grew, like how is that possible? That's the kind of thing that they're looking for. They want to make sure that everything is kind of on the up and up because this is such a new industry that there's growing pains even on the state side. There's growing pains there in New York State. They're a little bit behind Colorado and other places like Colorado and California and that sort of thing, and so they're also playing a bit of a catch up game as well. So we're trying to fit into that mold as it's developing. And it's been a ride so far, I will say.
2 points about that. One, the cannabis industry still gives me personally the heebie-jeebies a little bit. I'll just say that. But two, this sounds really fun from an ERP perspective. I mean, anytime
Yeah.
you get into heavy regulation and heavy tracking, especially on the inventory side, that is ERP bread and butter. And so that sounds like it's got to be a lot of fun figuring out how to do that in Acumatica.
It has been, yeah, it's definitely going to be a challenge, especially come, I would say, June, when things will really step up with the harvest. But I have to ask, how come it gives you the heebie-jeebies? I'm just curious.
I don't know. Just I know that cannabis is more than marijuana, but for me, personal experience watching my cousins, marijuana really was a gateway drug for them into other things. And anyways, I
Sure.
know it's become a lot more socially acceptable, but I personally am not into that. just because I watched it personally. But I
Oh,
know that
sure,
cannabis
sure.
is more than just that, and obviously it's a booming industry, and there's a lot of money being made. And so, you it wouldn't stop me from working with a cannabis company. Just the whole industry still kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies. But I think it's fascinating when you look at, like you said, just the New York being even a little bit newer to the ball game. There's just so many moving pieces, and it's job security. It's just interesting, and yeah, it seems like, in my opinion, it's a good place to be if you're in an ERP, in ERP role, because so much of that does affect the ERP system.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And I understand the part about the heebie-jeebies thing and what you're saying there. And I think I think that's a legitimate concern. But at the same time, I think you'd also find a lot of people who would feel the same way about alcohol and that industry.
Absolutely.
And I think
Absolutely.
you'd
Yeah,
also find,
I like saying it just because, like, I put it out there, but it wouldn't even stop me personally from working with a cannabis company. So
sure, sure,
yeah,
sure,
so,
yeah.
so I'm not saying,
And
like, I'm not putting up the two fingers X, that kind of thing. I'm just, yeah, I'm saying the two pieces of it for me.
Oh yes, yes, yes. No, I totally get it. It's a new industry, and I think that there's a lot of there's a lot of questions around it for sure, and a lot of I think a lot of people don't understand how regulated it is, and you can't just open up a stand on the side of the road and start selling weed. But but yes, it's new and it's kind of the new kid on the block. So yeah, you wouldn't be the first person who had those kind of reservations who's talked to me about that. There's definitely been some family members who have raised some eyebrows at it for sure.
I would imagine. So,
Yeah.
tell me then, what are you using as far as Acumatica goes? Like, give me the full breadth of modules, including what you're doing on the manufacturing side. I'm curious if it's standard Acumatica manufacturing or if it's the Max Q product or something else. Give me that Acumatica lens, what it looks like there.
Sure, yes. So we obviously are using uh, the full suite of Acumatica to track things like sales, to track things like our vehicles, distribution, also all the different product that we have, of course, and there is quite a lot. You don't just have your dry flour, but you also have your concentrates. You have your frozen, you have things called biomass, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of tracking of inventory, but primarily the thing that kind of brings a lot of that together is, as you mentioned, it is the MaxQ cannabis module for Acumatica that we employ the use of, every day. You know, and that without that, it would be it would be much more difficult. But MaxQ allows you to it kind of focuses things a little bit. It takes into account certain processes that are specific to the cannabis industry. Particularly, one of the biggest ones is the cultivation side of things. MaxQ is really very good at just I don't know if this is the right word, but kind of knowing, like what a company needs to kind of track those sorts of things and kind of move forward and keep everything, keep all the ducks in a row, and helps you just organize that the things like the inventory better and kind of plugs in with the more sales and distribution side of things as well. And it's a nice little addition to Acumatica that we use for sure.
I'm curious, you mentioned vehicles. What do you use to track? Is that just like fixed assets you're talking about, or tell me more about that
So
area?
we one of the things that we do is for shipping. We have shipping manifests, and one of the things that has to be tracked in the state of New York. by the Office of Cannabis Management is the vehicle and the driver's license number, the vehicle license plate. All of that has to be captured on the shipping manifest whenever you have an order. To a specific size. So if we load up a van that's going down to New York City, that manifest has to have all that information on it. And it has to be in our system as well. Each transaction is recorded so that you'd be able to click on that transaction and you'd be able to see, okay, this is the vehicle that it was sent down with, this is the driver, et cetera, et cetera.
And then do you have to actually track it to the destination?
There is a handshake that happens, yes, between customer and between us and the customer, that also gets recorded as well. In a sense, it kind of takes
Interesting.
it from an open status to a pending status to then a closed status.
So I as I mentioned before we hit record, I was just like going where the conversation takes us, and this one sounds interesting.
Absolutely.
So I'm gonna keep digging. You might not
Yeah,
know because you've only been there for 3 months, but like, do you know if
sure.
that is standard Acumatica? Is it just, or is it like a Max Q thing? Do you know what handles it?
That might be a Max Q thing, but I'm not sure. As far as I've been there, that's just kind of how things have been. They, but I know part of it as well um, is also the state. So I'll give you a little bit of insight. The state OCM, again, Office of Cannabis Management. That's what they call it in New York. I think it's different for other states. They have their own kind of template for these things. For example, for a shipping manifest that says, okay, this is the information that we need. Here, we need you to fill out, the sections 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, and needs to have this information and blah blah blah. So then we took that manifest and then we imported it and essentially made our own report that mimicked it in the Acumatica report designer. We essentially duplicated it, the format of the state's report into Acumatica, and now we have it in our system. And again, now that I'm talking about it, I believe it is MaxQ specific. That so when we print those reports, um, it pulls that information directly from Acumatica. So if you go into Acumatica and you look at that transaction, there will be tabs there on the bottom. You can say, you click in there and say, oh, okay, here's all the driver information. Oh, okay, here's all the license and the licensee information here. And so the report designer or the report was designed to pull all that information and mimic the format of the state's report itself.
Gotcha. That makes
Yeah,
sense. And yeah, that makes sense that it would, from a technical perspective, just be a report designer report. But yeah, those things take a lot of time to develop and get right, especially when it's a state form that it needs to look like. So that makes sense
exactly.
there. And then transactionally, it's sort of starting to sound to me like you don't really need to generate a totally separate transaction with its own path. It might just be additional fields on the shipment itself. Do you know?
We're actually in the process of doing a bit of an overhaul on the on transportation manifests because as time goes on here and we kind of learn, okay, this is the information that the state needs. Oh, okay, they need this. Oh, okay, a little bit of time passes. Okay, they need this. You know, you kind of finesse that out a little bit. You kind of finesse the information that ends up on that report. And this is across the board. This is just one example, of course. But yeah, the idea is that you want to kind of capture everything as accurately as possible because there is definitely that kind of big brother aspect of it. Everything has to be on the up and up. so so I would also add to that there's also some growing pains that are associated with this. So we're all kind of in the state of New York, we're all kind of learning at the same time.
Yeah, because it's a moving target, right? It's not
It
just
is.
here's the regulations that have been out there for 20 years. It's here's the regulations that have been out there for 2 weeks, and they might change in the next 4 weeks.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. There is a bit of an aspect of that. We're kind of building the plane as it's on the runway.
And that's what makes it interesting, right? That's what makes,
It
from the
does.
ERP's perspective, that's just a great spot to be in because of that.
Exactly. Yeah, and I've taken quite a shine to the report designer. I really kind of did a deep dive into that, and I did the Acumatica Open University course on that, and which was very informative, and kind of looked at a few other things, but I've really kind of, like I said, taken a shine to it. I actually quite enjoy creating reports on it now, and just kind of moving things around, tweaking things, pulling the information. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
And so it sounds like you're very hands-on. And what I'm curious about here, and maybe let's stick with this theme of the driver thing,
Mm.
because it's just a good example of it. Um, how much of it is you getting the requirements and then passing them on to MaxQ? And then how much of it is you just doing the work yourself? And is it a struggle to know when it's one or the other? Does that make sense?
Yes, so far we've been blessed with very competent people in our company, so that by the time I came on board, a lot of the stuff was already in place, and I've just been kind of developing and finessing it ever since. So fortunately, all the people that are involved in this, they are actually able to use Acumatica themselves in such a way that they can input this information. Now, does that mean everything goes off without a hitch? Of course not. No, there's a lot of troubleshooting. People forget how to do things, and you kind of have to work with them one on one. But that's part of the job. I knew that as when they hired me, that my job would essentially be the connective tissue between a lot of different companies, or I'm sorry, a lot of different departments within the company. So there is an element kind of both, I would say.
And so it sounds to me like someone else is making that decision, which does make sense if you've only been there for 3 months. It's probably someone else is making the
Yeah.
decision. We're going to send this particular thing over to MaxQ, or we're going to put it on John's plate. And then if it goes on your plate, then you're decision made. You're just making it happen at that point.
At that point, yeah, it's me and the gentleman that trained me. He's very talented in Acumatica. You should have him on the podcast. His name's Matthew Evans. He is directly responsible for propping up Acumatica when they were first getting it going. About, like I said, about a year ago, a year and a half plus, plus I would say. And he's been doing a lot to train me on the position and show me the ins and outs of it as well. So without him, it would have truly been just me. But he said, look, we need another person in here. It can't be just all him. And he was right. It's a monumental undertaking, especially, as I said, for kind of like this company that has this very much startup vibe to it. Getting everybody on board with such in many ways, it can be daunting. Acumatic can be daunting for people. This daunting piece of software, to really kind of get everybody on board with it has been a huge challenge. So yeah, we're still kind of, him and I work very closely together, and we still, of course, are work directly with the people in the company every single day. And you have that advantage because it is a smaller company. It's not this big, gigantic one. It is growing, and it's growing quite a bit. But you still are able to get that face time with people and teach them, how to use it, so it doesn't all fall on just one or two people.
That makes sense. Yeah, I did put Matthew Evans down in my notes. I'll follow up with you offline about that. But
Yeah,
yeah, so then for
absolutely.
you personally, only 3 months so far. Sounds like report designer you're into already. That's a great place to start, in my opinion. What other tools, like, have you gotten into the new workflow engine at all, or doing any types of low code, no code customizations?
I haven't gotten into any of the workflow stuff yet. Most of my work in Acumatica has, yeah, and this is kind of a product of where we are as a company right now. It's not cultivation season yet, and we're a long ways off from harvest at this point. It'll be many months before that. So at the moment, we're still working through inventory from the previous year for the previous harvest. So a lot of my work has primarily been learning kind of the bones of Acumatica. I've had that opportunity to not only, of course, do the report designer, but also start to learn things like how to do generic inquiries and how to do dashboards and things like that. So so that when the time comes, I can kind of more take the ball and run with things. And that's been very interesting. Generic inquiries is something that I'm currently um, you mentioned kind of hands-on, and you're absolutely right. I do prefer to work that way. So generic inquiries are one of those things I'm just kind of doing a deep dive in, and I'm received some training on it, but a lot of it so much has been just like seeking out additional training, whether that be like through online, like YouTube videos or Acumatic Open University or something like that. But also just to kind of make heads or tails of that, because when I was a CNC programmer, we worked with a type of code called G code, which is completely different from anything Acumatica uses. Acumatica is more SQL, Python, as I understand it, which is something that I'm familiar with, but only on a very surface level. So there's also an element of that I kind of have in the back of my head that, okay, eventually I'm really going to have to get in there and really kind of figure out the more coding side of things if we're I'm really going to get deep into this. So that's kind of something that's upcoming, if you will, at the moment. But yes, for right now, it's been a mix of different things. And yeah, generic inquiries are the current are the current beast to conquer, if you will.
And actually, yeah. So it sounds it. My advice might be too strong, but my take on it for you is you're mainly in the reporting area right now, which
Hmm.
is my bread and butter. I like that area because I find that the more you feed people with reporting, the bigger that beast grows, and especially in an industry like yours where it's a moving target and your reporting audience is not just internal, but it's external with the state, et cetera. You'll have your hands full for a while, especially as you said, when
Oh,
harvest season kicks in. And
oh,
so,
absolutely.
yeah, that's a great way to get into things from the reporting side. I will mention check out on augforums.com. There's a course link up on the top. Might be something that could shortcut your generic inquiry path. There's about 5 hours of video training content on that. There is a
Wow.
cost to it, but that's something I put together um, a while back, and it's still very relevant. Not very. It's still generic inquiries haven't changed, so it's still the same thing. And it's all about
Right.
getting you comfortable with how to query the database. But
Oh,
so
that's wonderful. I'll have to look at that. Yeah.
so it sounds like you're in the reporting area. I think that's just a perfect place to start. And it might even be over a year before you really start getting into process improvement side, and that would be fine because I think it'd be perfect timing because as you mentioned, the coding side, Acumatica is not actually Python; it's .NET. But
Oh, there you go.
they've been in this multi-year process to completely rewrite the application into .NET Core, which sounds like it's the same, but it's, as I understand it, it's like a different language, similar but different. And so that's been a massive project, multi-year project. And when they're done with it, and they might be probably another year away or so from that, it'll be a brand new application. And so why I say
Oh,
that
wow.
is if you stay focused on the reporting for the next year, that's probably going to keep your hands full. Then you wait until the whole .NET, they call it modern UI, but it's really a complete rewrite of the application. Once the whole modern UI thing is done, then you don't have to learn the old .NET at all. You just learn the .NET Core way, right? So I
Oh,
feel like you're in
okay.
a good spot in that if you postpone, and you of course check with Matt if he agrees on this, but in my opinion, if you postpone getting into the coding side of things, then you don't ever have to learn the old world, right? You just learn the new world. So that could work out really well for you timing wise.
Oh, well, that's a wonderful insight. Thank you for that.
And then let's see, what was the other thing I was going to ask you on that? Oh yeah. So all right. So it sounds like mainly reporting focus, but then you're also obviously you're learning the cannabis industry itself, and you're spouting off acronyms and things, and so you're knee deep in that. Um,
Yeah,
and
yeah. I thought I left all the acronyms behind in social work.
and then all right. So then what I wanted to ask you about is oh sorry, one other point, and then I want to ask you something. So then one other point that I'll make is on the reporting versus coding side. I like thinking of reporting and business process as two sides of the same coin. Because when you touch business process improvement, there always should be some type of reporting output. And some people just get too hung up on making things efficient without thinking about the output. They get too like lean Six Sigma focused and to forget about, what's the real point of the thing. The other side of it though is whenever you're touch reporting and people need information, there's always a process side to that makes it happen, right? So even though you're focused on reporting, you are learning process at the same time. You're just maybe not going to touch coding
Absolutely,
for another year, but you're learning those two sides simultaneously. Whichever side you
absolutely,
touch, you're always touching the other side, process or reporting, reporting or process, in my opinion.
exactly. I
Um,
agree. And in this industry, there's so much data to capture. I mean, it is just an immense amount, and to do that in a a level responsible way is as I'm learning quite challenging.
which is awesome, right? It's a great
Oh,
job
that's the
security
job.
to be in. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's awesome.
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't have it any other way. It's because I mean, at the heart of it, I think if you're going to do this sort of thing, you you have to have some sort of love or interest at the very least in organization. Just flat out, just organization, organizing, because I feel like that is 90% of my job.
And you're liking
It's
that
just
so far. You're
and,
liking
and
that.
and oh yeah, I love it.
Oh, that's great.
And that's the teacher in me. That's the teacher in me. I, my goal with this is to eventually get to a point where I can be able to teach other people in the company how to use this software, but be able to present it in such a way that a 5-year-old can understand it, which is that's always the goal, right?
Yeah.
And that's how you truly know what you're talking about, is if you can explain it in a 5-year-old will understand. So that's always the part of me that I love learning something new like Acumatica, and then it's presented to me in such a way, but then peeling back all those layers and getting down to it and being able to say, okay, this is how we can really truly teach people and come up with a program for it. And as I said, that's something that I've bandied about uh, from the very beginning, and it was actually one of the reasons why they told me that they hired me, is because they liked my teaching background, and they kind of had it envisioned
That
that,
makes
oh, this
sense.
guy might be able to teach Acumatica, so to the rest, to newcomers coming into the company, So I think there's also an element of that too.
That makes sense. Actually, there's a guy, Jeremy Patoka in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, not too far from you.
Oh yeah.
He founded a company called Pre-Sales Leader several years ago, and they're in the Acumatica space consultancy, and they've grown tremendously. And two of his hiring focuses are people with a teaching background or a church ministry background. And
Oh,
that
interesting.
teaching, he himself had a teaching background. And I think there definitely is something to that. You have to care, you have to just not be focused on doing the work yourself and building up your own little personal educational knowledge, but you have to have that passion for spreading that throughout the company because that's what ERP is, right? It's about connecting departments and stuff together. So that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I just think that it's such a wonderful piece of software. It's so versatile. There's so many applications to it. Has so many uses, and you know, with this kind of startup vibe company, that this company has, um, you have a lot of people who are are very much on board with, okay, yeah, we do need to kind of get all our ducks in a row and make sure, everything is looking good and this, that, and the other thing. Not to say that they weren't before, but to really kind of take it to that next level with a piece of software like Acumatica. And when you have so many people who are willing to do that, that has been something that has been so refreshing as well. There hasn't been this resistance, like, oh, that's for nerds. I don't want to learn that, like, or whatever, but it's my experience has been quite the opposite, and that has just been inspired me to want to learn more about it so that I can get to that point where it's like, okay, yeah, let's do this, and we're gonna do this. We're gonna do it all together, and we're gonna be able to teach new people that come in and get everybody on board, so the whole company is connected, and it's not this experience isn't just filtered through one or two people.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah, when you mentioned the organizational, like kind of having an aptitude for organizing things. This is how I like describing it, but I'm curious if you would have a different take on it. I kind of like describing it that the business or just the real world in general is more like a bunch of circles, and ERP is about putting those circles into squares because ERP is very rigid. It's a computer system. I'm
Hmm.
curious your take on that.
on on if I feel like uh, Acumatica is a good piece of software for helping to organize a company. Is that what you mean?
Just the process in general. So like whatever the ERP system is, and maybe circles isn't the best way. It's like it's curved lines. Like the real world is a bunch of curved curved things, and ERP is very much essentially putting things in a table format, rows and columns, like a spreadsheet. And you're putting squares around things that are not necessarily squares. You're putting rules around things that
I see.
don't
Yes.
don't necessarily want rules around them, but they need rules around them. And so there's like you have to be at peace with the fact that the real world is not squares. But
Yes.
when it comes to any ERP system, essentially it's all stored in a database, which is tables, which you could just think of as spreadsheets, rows and columns of squares or
Sure.
rectangles, right? And I feel like a lot of that process is one, helping those curved lines to become more straight with right angles. But then the other part of it is learning when not to pull it into the ERP. And there's kind of this art to allowing the business world to do whatever it does. You're not going to try to hinder that, but at the same time, you want to scale the organization and put more of those rules in place. I might not be describing it well, but I'm doing my best to describe what you were saying about being an organizer, but I'm curious just kind of your take on that whole process. Nothing related to Acumatica specifically.
Yeah. No. I think you're absolutely right. I think for any, especially for any company, and I mean this is not just my company. It'd be any company that you when you have a startup, things are yeah, and this hasn't been my case. I don't, there's a lot of assumption here because I've only been there for 3 months, but um, you, when you start up a company like this and everything is so brand new, there's that freedom there of, oh, we can kind of, figure things out, and yeah, this is great, and it's everything's new and wonderful, and yeah, and it is kind of those like curvy lines you were talking about, and then I feel like at a certain point, and for lack of a better word, reality kind of slaps you in the face a little bit, And and you kind of say, okay, all right, yeah, okay, now we have to start like fitting into a mold here. And we have to, kind of, make sure that, we're doing everything that we need to do. So yeah, I feel like that is kind of the natural process of things for sure. There's always that period of, oh, it's a little loosey goosey, and then there's that period of, all right, we need to really kind of get down here and get all our ducks in a row and make sure we're capturing everything and so on and so forth. So, and then that's where that organization comes in, where you have to kind of fit it into the square hole, the round peg into the square hole. Uh, and I would imagine that that's with any company, um, that's new and exciting. So yeah, for sure, I would agree with that 100%.
I'm going to steal that phrase, fitting it into a mold. I think that's it. Yes, fitting it into a mold.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because yeah, it's a curious thing, isn't it? When I don't know if you've ever been a part of a startup company. I've never been a part of a startup company, not until recently, and it's a perspective that I have never had before. So not only is it like a first to like be working with all this new software and this, that, and the other thing, and learning all this new stuff and these new processes, yada yada, but also to just be a part of that new perspective that kind of does things to my brain that makes me think about things in a way that I never thought about them before. And not only like I find myself having to recalibrate a lot, about how I talk to people. And what I mean by that is like how I'm actually imparting this knowledge, how I've learned a little bit so far, so I have been able to kind of teach some people some things. And but coming at it from that perspective, it's new for me. It's but yeah, to, then to do that, but also to fit into that, to fit into that kind of mold of what the company is trying to do and to go for. I have felt that it's been a bit of a tightrope act, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. Yeah, it's a lot. And quick time check, by the way. Are you able to go over a few minutes, or do you have a hard stop here?
Absolutely,
You are
absolutely,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, it's well, tell me if I heard correctly. When you say tightrope, what I hear is you're dealing with people, and so a lot of the challenges are more emotional than they are logical necessarily. Is that kind of
I
what
would
you
say a
mean?
little bit of both. I would say a little bit of both,
Okay.
because again, it goes back to that. How do you explain it like to a 5-year-old? And I'm not saying the people at my company have the brains of 5-year-olds, but Acumatica, let's be honest, is a very daunting piece of software. And for some people, it's, you can explain something a certain way, but it's, I mean, I know, speaking personally, somebody would explain something to me and I'd be like, I'm sure that makes sense to you, but that doesn't make any sense to me. So it is there's always that a little bit of emotional resistance, but also the logical part of it as well. Because I mean, it lets got to use your brain for this sort of stuff as well. If that,
That
if
does
that,
make
I hope that answers your
No, that
question.
does make sense. Yeah, and I don't hear you saying that you work at a company full of 5-year-olds. What I hear
No,
you saying is that
no, I
you
know you don't. I didn't want to say that about my own company, just in case any of them are listening.
No, what I hear you saying is that you have the right view in that your job is to work hard to make it understandable to a 5-year-old. And the reason is it's not really anything to do with the intelligence of your audience, in my opinion. A lot of it just has to do with time. If you can
Exactly.
explain it in a way that people can understand it in 5 minutes instead of 5 hours, right? They don't have the time to
Right.
sit there and focus on it for 5 hours, right? Everyone's got That's why, like, writing an email to someone, you got to keep it short because they're not going to read much of your email, right? And so, same thing when you actually get to sit down and work with someone on something, it's your job to make it as simple as possible because they only have a limited amount of time, right? So, I think you have the right view on that, and it has nothing to do with
Absolutely.
people. audience. It has everything to do with things are moving fast, and you need to disseminate that knowledge as quickly as possible because they have many other things that they need to be working on, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's a carryover from my teaching years, is that you always kind of have it in the back of your mind that that person's life doesn't start and stop with you, when you teach them something. They have a million, everyone in the world has a million things going on in their lives, So yeah, being able to impart that knowledge in a concise manner is paramount.
Well, I think you've got a great mindset for it, and I
Well,
really
thank you.
appreciate you coming on to talk about it. Not being, what's the word? Right? Not being too self-conscious about only being 3 months in. I love hearing perspectives from people who have been around the ERP space for decades, and in your case, 3 months. I love all these different perspectives, and I just think you have a great mindset going into it. I think you're in a great spot in terms of job security slash, industry that really needs ERP skills. And yeah, I'm excited for you to see where this takes you in the next few years.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I appreciate you saying that, and it's been a pleasure. Yeah, I'm very aware that I don't know a whole lot about this stuff, and that it's a process, but it's been exciting so far, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes.
Well, thanks again for taking the time, and hope to catch up
My
with
pleasure.
you at some point in the future.
Oh, that would be lovely. Yeah, maybe we could do a follow-up episode in a year or so. Maybe we could do a follow-up episode after harvest is all taken care of and all that.
Sounds like a plan, man. Thanks again.
All right, Tim. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, that's it for now. We'll catch you on the next episode of ogforums.com Real Talk. Thanks for listening, and take care.